Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the fourth MissionLakes webinar titled Building Consensus for Lake Restoration, Governance, Engagement, and Cooperation. My name is Perla Rivadeneira. I'm a researcher at Fondazione Enrico Mattei and Ca' Foscari University of Venice, and I'm very pleased to moderate today's session. To give a brief context of these webinar topics, we have seen that across Europe and beyond, lake restoration is increasingly recognized not only as an ecological challenge, but also as a governance and societal one. So restoring lakes requires cooperation between researchers, local communities, institutions, NGOs, practitioners, and also other types of actors, often with different priorities, perspectives, and interests. Therefore, building consensus around restoration actions is essential if we want restoration efforts to be effective, long-lasting, and socially supported. Today's webinar brings together experiences and reflections from several European initiatives working precisely on these types of challenges. Through methodological presentations and practical case studies, we will explore how stakeholder engagement, co-creation, and collaborative governance can support more inclusive and successful restoration processes. We are happy to start with Sonia Mena from WaterLANDS International. She will present on co-creation in ecosystem restoration, navigating challenges and conflicts. And her presentation will focus on conflict resolution in stakeholder engagement and more or less on methods and tools that can support participatory processes in restoration context. We will then continue with a presentation from one from ProCleanLakes and FutureLakes projects. Shanti from the Hellenic Society for the Protection of Nature will discuss how the ProCleanLakes initiative moves from planning to action in European natural lakes. After that, Julia Schuleka from the Norwegian Institute for Water Research will present the FutureLakes approach to governance complexity and stakeholder engagement in lake restoration. Finally, we will hear from Heikki Mäkinen from Vesijärvi Foundation in Finland. He is the CEO of this foundation, and he will be sharing practical insights from a stakeholder perspective and discuss a long-standing and successful model of collaborative lake governance. Thank you all very much for joining us today and for your interest in collaborative approaches. I hope this webinar provides an opportunity not only to learn from different experiences, but also to reflect on how cooperation and engagement can enforce restoration efforts across different contexts. And now, without further ado, I give the floor to Sonia Mena from WaterLANDS International.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation, for organizing this event, Perla, for the invitation. Of course, I'm really happy to be here with you all today. And I would like to share some of the work that we do in WaterLANDS project in relation to stakeholder engagement, specifically promoting co-creation practices. I will tell you more about that in a few slides. And how does it relate, or how does it apply to the context of ecosystem restoration? And of course, during this process, sometimes we find some challenges that can turn also into conflict sometimes. And I will tell you more about what we have learned so much about it. This work, I do it with my colleague, Nick Schasford. And I will talk in representation of both of us. Okay, this is more or less the summary. So I will start telling you about the project that I'm working for, a little bit of the co-creation concepts, what kind of products are we building through the WaterLANDS project as a guideline for driving these collaborative processes in ecosystem restoration and especially in wetlands restoration. Also the challenges, the conflicts. I will mention also some examples of the conflicts and the issues that we are facing now in the sites that we are doing the ecological restoration, and hopefully to inspire you with some tools and methods that we are using to navigate and to address these challenges. And we will finalize with some reflection questions, kind of self-reflection about your own projects. Hopefully that will resonate with you. So this is the WaterLANDS project. This is about restoring wetlands ecosystem. Oh, sorry for the typo there. Now I say it. Ecosystem for carbon storage, people in wilderness. And basically what we are doing is to enhance or enable this knowledge exchange between the action sites. This is the abbreviature of AS and KS, and the knowledge sites. So sites that are ongoing restoration projects, and the ones that already did it and wants a lot to share with the ones that are going through. So it's a little bit on the technical knowledge and collaborative processes to share this knowledge. And this project is probably one of the most holistic ones that I have worked in during my career, because it really addresses the pillars that are necessary to build up these processes around governance, around mobilizing finance, engagement with communities, and of course, at the center of it, the ecological restoration. And co-creation is really at the core of the process. So yeah, this is WaterLANDS. You can see the duration, consortium, and all the details. And for this project, as I understand, also for EUROLakes project, you are using as a guideline the 4 returns framework for landscape restoration. We are also using it as an umbrella framework to guide the process and the different sites that we are performing the wetlands restoration. And for the ones that are not very familiar with this framework, it is about, for example, considering some different elements, some time frames that you need to understand and address during the project. For example, we work with really long time frames when we talk about restoration, minimum of 20 years, for example. Process elements, then you can see it in yellow: landscape partnership, shared understanding, building this vision, technique action. Also the part of the definition of the zones that will end up with having these returns and the different domains of the returns for inspiration, social returns, natural returns, and financial returns that needs to be in balance. And we understand that the co-creation and collaborative process is what enables the application of this 4 returns framework, for example. And this success depends on the inclusion and the leading of the stakeholder processes. This framework was developed by Common Land, but also Wetlands International and Landscape Finance Lab contributed to its development. So this is guiding us, EUROLakes, and I don't know if other projects are using it, but we find it very useful. And in terms of co-creation, maybe this is kind of a buzzword at the moment. You may hear of a lot in different sectors and different contexts. Sometimes even a workshop, it's called a co-creation workshop, but actually what we understand of this concept, this is the creative process of bringing a diverse range of actors. And when I say diverse, I mean academia, government, civil society organizations, universities, so everyone that represents different sectors, and the process will be influenced on this. And to bring these actors together for these different knowledge domains and different types of knowledge together, and to build this shared understanding, right? So we bring people together with different ideas, needs, concerns, and we try to find this common ground. We can always find some of global or more general views in which we find this connection of these local values, needs, and together we design these context-based projects, which is really important to take in consideration that it is not exactly that you can pick up a method that works everywhere. Of course, we need to consider the context, early engagement. So bringing the people in from the beginning is really key in these processes with active collaboration, and also empower them to have a say on the design of the project, bringing the ideas and how do we use their knowledge afterwards. So this is more or less what we understand for co-creation. And if you can see it, for example, using this traditional ladder of citizen participation, that we make some adaptation. In the past, we were just informing people, so just telling them what we were planning to do. I'm talking about decades ago, then consulting them, asking them their opinion, then engaging, and we see co-created as the top level of engagement at the moment, in which we don't do it for them, but we do it with them and treat them, the different sectors, as peers without imbalanced powers, power inequalities during the process. And you may be wondering why the stakeholder engagement. I think that I'm really convinced that it's very, very important when you work in ecosystem restoration. We did this survey in 2023, trying with some experts and practitioners, more than 100 across Europe, and to rank different aspects. And one of the main top variables that appear in this survey, it was related to stakeholder engagement as a barrier for ecosystem restoration. So conflict interest of different stakeholders, lack of collaboration, that was the top one reason or barrier that people face when trying to restore ecosystems in this survey. Other topics, you can see the other ones, but also in the number 4, also lack of coordination between decision makers, so also related to collaborative practice. So you can see that many people share this. Within the WaterLANDS project, we are working to build a document or guideline that could hopefully help people to navigate these processes. And we call it a co-creation framework for wetlands restoration, conservation, and restoration. And this beautiful illustration also, it is part of the work on open artists that we are working with, Sarah Heusarot. And it's part of this document that we are finalizing, hopefully before summer will be ready. And what we were talking about is this collating information on what is co-creation, the whole process, identifying challenges and strategies, the different methods and tools, and also case studies that we can talk about, so you can see in which context these different methods and tools were applied, and if that connects with the place that you are working on, it could be adapted or applied in these other places. So this is ongoing. And also within this framework, we already identified many challenges, more than I would like to accept, actually, in relation to collaboration processes in the context of wetland restoration. And maybe I didn't mention it before, but we work with different types of wetlands. So we have the sites of, actually, some of the speakers are from Venice, I think, or they are there. We have one in Venice, Bulgaria, and different types of wetlands, actually. Different types of wetlands, so marshes, peatlands, lagoons, and so on, I think, and coastal wetlands as well. So, and this applied to the different types of these wetlands. And these are the challenges that more or less were identified. Actually, for example, when you try to start the processes of stakeholder engagement and you have limited timelines, this is really plays against the whole process, because building trust takes time. And how do you make this whole process of building trust fit in within a very tight schedule and or proposal that you are working on? So this is something that our partners really struggle in, and they need to make decisions about it, because it really, when you apply co-creation, you really need to be have this flexible mindset and adaptive management type of approach, because many things happen along the way and you need to change sometimes the plans. So how does it fit with the projects, horizon projects, for example, that you have work packages, you will have certain deadlines, deliverables. So it's really hard to make this to talk to each other sometimes. We found also challenges related with land ownership, land use planning. Of course, these are, you might be familiar with those. Political willingness, so how to convince authorities that these restoration processes are worth to follow up and to develop the actions in the site. how to get them on board. For example, in Venice, they really struggle with this, but at the end, they built the trust, and the government started to see some results on the restoration, and they get them on board, and they have now good relationships with some authorities there. Tackling unequal powers, lack of sustainable funding. So, for example, if you want to have your stakeholders engaged for a long time and keep them motivated, what do you do with the funding stops, right? So that the continuous funders is really needed to keep them up to date and engaged and motivated during this process. And maybe most I found it really interesting, the socio-ecological challenges. You need to sometimes understand that there is limited recognition of the different values of the wetlands, and in terms of biodiversity, in terms of carbon storage, in terms of mitigation for climate change and extreme events. So how do we navigate these narratives or perceptions that sometimes people have around wetlands? We found some strategies to overcome this or tackle these challenges as well. Or the lack of urgency. Sometimes people see climate change or extreme events as really like a distant topic, and it's really hard to make them understand that this is more real and tangible than they imagine. And then the ugly side of restoration, that it's a kind of a funny topic. I will tell you more in a few moments. So these are, for example, the structure of this is whole in the framework that I'm telling you about. So these are the challenges that we found, and we identified also strategies that were applied for our partners in WaterLANDS to tackle these challenges. For example, and the limited recognition of the values of the wetlands, we took people on the sites, we made walks with them to explain in other terms. Sometimes we collaborate with artists because they really help us to build new narratives or new ways of perceiving the wetland in itself, that sometimes scientists cannot reach that space in terms of engaging with people, with communities, and talking and using other words, not so technical sometimes. And also, how do you frame restoration? What kind of technical terms do you use? Sometimes some people frame it as bringing back nature or bringing back some ecosystem that it was in the past. And for example, in some places it didn't work. So you really need to frame it as with a future look, and looking into the future, more into the past. Of course, you need to understand ecosystem reference and so on, but how do you frame it to the people? How do you communicate? It really makes a difference in terms of engaging with people. On the lack of urgency in climate change, for example, so people can use visualizing the scenario mapping to visualize risk and the territory, so to make change more tangible, of course. And the ugly side of restoration, it is, for example, in the case of peatlands, sometimes to restore the peatland, you need to go with heavy machinery. So with big machines into the territory that really looks like destruction when you are trying to build a little dam or to change the drainage here and there, or even to re-wet the whole part of it, so bring the water back into the place. The trees, they are not part of the ecosystem, will start to rot and decay and die, basically. But people really value those trees that are not part of the ecosystem. How do you balance these different perceptions of the people and the landscape aesthetics? And how do you frame it? More like a working process rather than before and after picture. So that it's really important, and we notice that. On the co-creation challenges and conflicts, so sometimes a challenge is more like a problem to be solved, not necessarily some two opposite views or an opposition from the actors. And you will see that a conflict really emerges when stakeholders have this very incompatible interest, values, or expectations. And you will see some signals. Sometimes the language say, and some accusation type of verbal communication appears, rigid position, not really flexible or able to start a dialogue. The trust is eroding. Sometimes you convoke people to a workshop and participation is very low, or they go, but they don't really engage in the conversation. there are high emotions. Sometimes people leave the rooms and the workshops that you are convoking, or accusation, aggressivity. So really, you will see that there is a tense environment during the discussions, or sometimes you will see no engagement at all, which can also be a sign of a conflict, but more hidden. And we want to say it that conflicts needs to be seen. So in the way that you are positively addressed when the conflict is treated positively or in a constructive way, it really can bring new ideas or innovative problem-solving options for the interest that there is in conflict or the values. So really to treat them positively. Otherwise, it can escalate into a negative position quite quickly. So these are more or less the different type of conflicts that we have also identified. So you have the interest-based conflict, for example, that when you decide who gets to use the water, the land, or economic gains or losses, and you can find, for example, in this case, trade-offs or compensation can be one way to deal with this type of conflict. When it comes to value-based or ideological conflicts, or what I see, how people perceive the landscape, how people perceive the restoration actions in the wetlands, sometimes people see the wetlands draining as a progress, but all other people will see it as an ecological disaster, right? So then you need to really bring people into the table and find this higher goal. Sometimes you are aiming for the higher goal, but the method or the way to go through that might be the disagreement. So you really need to understand and to investigate what is actually behind these values or behind this interest and the people perception, to understand what are the values and beliefs. And sometimes, in the case that I will show you in a bit, relationship or historical conflicts. So sometimes you arrive into a place and actually there was a conflict in the past that is nothing to do with your project, but there is already mistrust or poor communication. And that can lead to, then in the first meeting or in the first encounters that you have with people, this will arise quickly. So maybe you just need to apologize for what was done in the past in terms of in behalf of the government or the behalf of your institution or whatever, and acknowledge past mistakes to move forward. You need to heal that wound, let's say, in order to move forward. And kind of we like to collect and take very practical tips or rules of dialogue. So the most important thing possibly is the active listening. So really trying to understand what the other people is saying, not trying to rush to speak or thinking and something else, what the other people the other person is trying to explain you why they have this view, a specific viewpoint. Also to balance with the inquiry, some questions, but not accusations. So that the way in which you also ask this question needs to be very respectful as well. Really trying to understand what it's behind. Sometimes people really needs to be heard about their demands, their concerns, their fears for the restoration actions in this case. And you also needs to be transparent with the project goals. What can be done from your position, role, the timing of the project. So that is really important. Suspending also judgment and assumptions during this process. Positive perception needs to be encouraged. And also acknowledges other people's views. Sometimes you don't need to agree in that conversation, but you need to acknowledge that this is the viewpoint of the other person. And I think time here is also, and sometimes with the time frames that we manage, because sometimes you need to rush for making decisions in your projects or in your initiatives, but this goes against building trust or listening or taking the people giving the people time to decide about this. Yeah, and a little bit of soft skills and the tone of your voice, your body language, be open to what other people wants to say. And sometimes when the conflicts are really heated, you may need someone to negotiate, to mediate in these circumstances that we have had that and also some projects. this is, for example, what we experienced. I was talking about the agri restoration. This is better to understand it with the pictures. So restoration is often seen as beneficial, as positive, but it can be quite messy and disruptive with this tree removal that it goes against what people think about restoration, right? But in the case of peatlands, it is, if you want to restore, sometimes you need to take some trees or they will die anyway when you bring water back. And so, for example, in this conflict, our partners, what they had to do, they just leave some trees in an area that was seen as valuable for the people, and they drained it and they re-wetted. They put the water back in the area. So there was compensation and kind of trade-offs, and there was agreements at the end with the people. And I already talked about the work in progress. So seeing as the different steps and not showing the final picture of restoration, in this case ecosystem restoration, because that can take quite some time and people get frustrated and the expectations are in place. So this is also an image from Finland, because also not only in Estonia but in Finland we face this challenge or conflict. In Groningen we have the example of historical distrust, and this goes because past actions in the territory by the government, they did not behave very well from what the people said that in Groningen. So there was mistrust for historical conflicts and other actions done by the government. And actually our partner in the project is the government institution there. So they had to deal with this not very positive baseline when they started the engagement for this new project, that they wanted to build a little dike to protect an area from and create an intertidal zone around that coastal area to protect the people also from sea level rise, but also to transform agricultural land into more restored area. And that created also the perception that, because people in the Netherlands really relied on sometimes heavy or gray infrastructure, right, on dams, on the polders, and this is nature-based solutions, and they not always trusted, right? So we need to change their perception as well. They had one-on-one conversations with this. So, and for that we have also co-creation toolbox, also methods. You will see here also the connection with the 4 returns framework, with the different phases and which tools that you can apply to that. So I would really encourage people in the projects to use some of these methods sometimes when you think that this will help the collaborative process and co-creation in general, and also if you think that there is tension or something to that conflict that is being overlooked. So citizen science as a way to reinforce community ties with wetlands, participatory mapping in order to understand what are the values really with a special component. People take a map there and try to map these different values and needs with people together. Venice, we have a great example on that. Bird ringing camps and local festivals also not only convoke people, but go where people are meeting. So meet people where they are in other festivals or cycling events, whatever, but you also go there to try to have a conversation and understand what the community interests and values and needs and beliefs are. And bird ringing camps also very successful initiative that our partners in Bulgaria did. Deep listening peatlands walks. So also to have experiencing not only visual, but sometimes listening with a specific device of sound walks to people experience and perceive the landscape in a different way. This is a conflict resolution performance, kind of, so it is called forum theater. And here our partners from the project performed and they kind of a little theater play on the ongoing conflict that they were having. They are still having it actually. And the people in our project partners gives idea of alternatives on how to deal with the situations. Also empowerment through capacity building. Many farmers in Ireland have been trained in order to make them feel with the also not only traditional knowledge that they have, but also knowledge coming from academia, and to have a really good understanding of the restoration actions. So integrated both types of knowledge that it's, of course, equally valuable. And we have engaged in WaterLANDS also with artists, which is found a fascinating experience, and how can they engage with the communities and other actors and bring different stories to the territory, sometimes engage much more than the communication related to science. Landscape arts, games, playing with the materials of the wetlands performances, etc. And I think I would leave it there. And I would like to make some self-reflection, just for you to think about what is the situation, if there is any conflict being avoided or overlooked in your project, and if you feel some stakeholders representing different sectors have been involved, or less empowered voices or marginalized has been excluded, because they have been excluded historically, let's say. So are you involved in them? How you are involving them in it, if so? We're giving them the right space to hear and integrate their demands, and how that knowledge and demands is being integrated into the project as well. So I would leave it there. I hope this was useful.
Yeah, thank you very much for these very insightful presentations, Sonia. I think it's you presented very useful tools. I think there are no questions in the Q&A, and looking at the time, I would jump directly to the next presentation, which is by Shanti from the Hellenic Society for the Protection of Nature. So the floor is yours, Shanti. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me today here to present to you the ProCleanLakes approach. I am Xanthika Distrunciu from the Hellenic Society for the Protection of Nature. I'm a biologist, and I'm here to represent the ProCleanLakes project. Okay, so let's start with the main question at hand. Why do lakes matter? Because Sonia made a great presentation before me, so it was a fantastic opening. And it's really important to go to the basic questions, like when we go to stakeholders, when we go to the public, and we want to persuade them, we know the scientific part, the solutions, everything. But what is the basic questions? Why do lake matters? We have more than 500,000 lakes all across Europe, and they support very basic needs like water security, biodiversity, and local economies. Yet they remain undervalued, and they're under increasing pressure in so many levels. So the first challenge is to convince people that lakes do actually matter. So let's see some numbers. What's the state of Europe's lakes? Among the European Union lakes assessed under the Water Framework Directive, 54% have achieved good ecological status, and only 19% have achieved good chemical status. That is a very low percentage. That shows that lake degradation is not consequential, is a systemic challenge across Europe. So how do we address this? We have the challenge. How do we move from planning to real implementation? How do we move from planning to action? So we have several challenges that our lakes are facing. Nutrient pollution, biodiversity loss, climate pressure are among some of them. But in order to promote restoration, we have to align, we have to bring together science, policy, and society. This sound like three simple words, but they frame a huge collaboration need. So lake restoration and valorization is complex due to multiple pressures, uncertainties, and governance challenges. So we're not just talking about an environmental challenge, but also a coordination challenge. And this is where stakeholder engagement and governance come to play. Let's go to the ProCleanLakes approach. At the core of the project, we have nature-based solutions for European natural lake facing some of the challenges that I have already discussed. So some of the nature-based solutions proposed throughout the project are constructed wetlands for nutrient removal, buffer zones and vegetation restoration, bioremediation and habitat enhancement, sustainable land and water management practices. But how do we bring all of these solutions to the local scale? We need to tailor each of them based on local conditions and pressures. How do we gain that knowledge? The three pillars on which the ProCleanLakes project is based are scientific knowledge, stakeholder engagement, and of course the nature-based solutions to be implemented in the lakes. However, in order to go from knowledge to on-the-ground solutions, the ProCleanLakes is implementing a structured process. Everything starts, of course, with monitoring and data, the scientific background. Then we move to nature-based solutions designed, as I said, tailored for local environments. But in order to do that, we can't only be based on scientific data. We can't actually know the situation of the lakes and the basin until we go to the table with the stakeholders, with the locals. So the next step is co-creation of the solutions. Let's say we have a pool of designs, but what are the solutions, of nature-based solutions? But how do we decide which nature-based solution can address each problem for a lake or a wetland? And sorry, I'm using the word lake because of the project, but this is this of course is for all wetlands. The best way is to go to the locals, to the people that have the practical knowledge, the things that possibly scientific monitoring and data cannot measure, and also challenges that you cannot see, let's say, through scientific data. So we go to the table and we co-create with the locals, and we make them part of the decision-making process. And then we move to implementation in a way that is accepted by, well, it can never be accepted by everyone. As I said, Sonia framed the situation very well before me, but accepted by a consensus solution that is accepted by the majority. And then the biggest challenge, but also extremely important, is replication. From one local context, how can we extrapolate a solution that can address similar issues in other contexts? So this is the process of the project. The ProCleanLakes project works across different types of sites. We have three different sets of let's say sites. We have the demonstration sites where the implementation of nature-based solutions take place. These are Lake Trichonis in Greece, Lake Bratis in Romania, and Lake Langvatnet in Norway. These lakes are generally lakes with good ecological status. We have the monitoring lakes, where data collection and impact assessment takes place. Lake Vransko in Croatia, Lake Medard in the Czech Republic, and Lake Zaghen in Romania. So these lakes are lakes that have been facing several issues in the past. Some solutions are already being implemented there, and we are using the data and impact assessment to monitor the situation of the lake, but also assess how several solutions have been working for these lakes. And then finally, we have the replication regions. I will talk about this next, where we aim to transfer and scale solutions. These are Lake Bled from Slovenia, Lake Ishelmir, I hope I'm saying it correctly, in the Netherlands, and Lake Uluabat in Turkey. So the replication sites that are sites that were not are not in partner regions, they're in associate regions, have been selected through a structured process, a cascading funding call, using technical and scientific criteria with the participation of experts from the project partners. And for these lakes, the project aspires to create tailored roadmaps for nature-based solutions and monitoring processes. So what we aim to do in these lakes is replicate solutions, transfer solutions beyond demonstration and monitoring lakes, promote collaboration across regions and stakeholders, and scale, adapt to different contexts across Europe. So let's go to the process of engaging the public and the stakeholders. So in order to build governance and stakeholder engagement to support implementation for the nature-based solutions, because let's face it, we might have the best solution ever in theory, but how do we move to actual application? First part of our process, of course, is stakeholder mapping and identification. And then we move to the very important part of engaging through communities of practice and roundtables in our case. So there are stakeholders that might have strong interests in the area, but you might not have such trouble in engaging them. But there are also stakeholders that might be smaller scale in terms of interest, but they might show the biggest resistance to the application of solutions. We need to engage all of these stakeholders using different approaches according to the issues we may be facing with them. And so once we do this, we have the co-design process of the nature-based solution. As I said, we have a pool of nature-based solutions. Some nature-based solutions might already be in place, and some of them are also, as Sonia also said, traditional practices that have been continuously implemented in the area, even by locals, and they might not even know they are using a nature-based solution. That is also something that is a strong tool for us trying to engage them. And finally, we have the validation and agreement for future implementation of the selected MBS. So we have the pool of MBSs, we have a consortium of people that have been engaged and come together, and we have scientists and technical advisors and local businessmen, and we have the public and the users, the end users. So in the end, we select the MBS or MBSs that address the issues of each wetland or lake in particular, and that we hope, and at least we have some sort of verification that they will be accepted and implemented by everyone involved. So let's go to a short example. Lake Brateș in Romania, where we have started, we're at the early stage of implementation through governance and co-design. So what has been done there are 2 roundtable sessions that were organized in 2025. In those sessions, we had the participation of several different types of stakeholders, like authorities, researchers, SMEs, and local stakeholders. What was the approach for this roundtables was the co-design of nature-based solution through structured discussion. So what was discussed among the people was mainly the SWOT analysis for selected MBSs and consensus processes. So what was done in this session was, what was the effort to do in this session was to mainly bring together the people, see the conflicts they had with each other, and see the input they had on challenges that we may face on nature-based solutions and how we could resolve these challenges. And that actually gave a first production of SWOT analysis. So what we faced there was the need to address diverse perspectives and local challenges that through scientific data we might not even had realized they may exist. So how do we go further from that? How do we go beyond that? How do we engage those people beyond implementation? So we've made the decision, we've chosen what is going to be implemented. The ProCleanLakes project is at the process of designing and developing participation tools and knowledge tools. The Knowledge Hub is meant to promote data integration and knowledge sharing among the communities in all possible levels. Decision tools for monitoring and planning support for lakes and regions that may be facing issues and are planning to address them with using nature-based solution. Stakeholder tools for co-creation and engagement, such as the roundtables and other participatory tools that could be possibly used. And of course, the replication roadmaps in order to guide transfer across regions. That is, let's say, the final step. It's quite ambitious, of course. This whole process is quite ambitious. So we have a shared vision for resilient and healthy European lakes, which the ProCleanLakes project aims to translate into the ProCleanLakes Action Plan for European Natural Lakes, a science-based framework for lake restoration and valorization across Europe. It is, as I said, highly ambitious as a plan. There's, in terms of governance and stakeholder engagement, there are some key challenges that need to be addressed, like, for example, gaps in communication and cooperation among different types of stakeholders, or even the same type of stakeholders, like businesses, for example, and private stakeholders, knowledge gaps, of course, poor stakeholder engagement, because I think this is going to be mentioned many times in this webinar, but it is very important that perceptions or false perceptions or even bad past experiences can form the way stakeholders feel about several interventions or what they believe is going to be imposing. And it's very important to take an approach that doesn't show us as the savior, the know-it-all, all-knowing savior that are bringing the solutions to them and are telling them, here it is, we're going to do this for you. You will have to continue implementing something that you are not part of. It's extremely important to make them part of the process and promote ownership of the solutions among local stakeholders. And of course, there's always legislation and policy constraints that don't always stem from misconceptions and miscommunications, but from policies that are already there in order to protect something else and get in the way of something else. But this also can be resolved with communication among authorities, of course. So the idea for the action plan to address these specific challenges that have to do with communication and stakeholder engagement is that we aspire to choose tailored nature-based solutions selected in evaluation, not only through science-based criteria, but also with co-creation with local stakeholders. Targeted stakeholder engagement and inclusion of local communities to the decision-making process, and of course, integrate knowledge through participatory processes and experience exchange tools. So this can go beyond this project and can be replicated to sites that go beyond the sites of the ProCleanLakes project. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Shanti. I don't know if there are any questions. So I actually have a question for you, Shanti.
Yes, please.
You mentioned co-creation of nature-based solutions, and from what I understood, you use SWOT analysis. And how exactly do you implement this SWOT analysis? Like, do you perform a SWOT for each NBS with a focus on what?
At this point, as I said, this is a very early stage, so the SWOT analysis is not, finalized. But the basic approach is that we're trying to, build the SWOT table, let's say, in technical terms, based on the challenges that have been recognized through monitoring and data collected by the scientific teams of the project in each lake. And this has not been done, by the way, in all the sites due to issues that have to do a lot with stakeholder engagement, but also, for example, in some sites we had issues with, let's say, the weather, and we couldn't do the co-creation process, so we have to try and do it again. But also from input that comes from the locals. So we try to recognize both the challenges and the opportunities and the solutions with by bringing together these two types of input. And the idea is to do this per site and per MBS. So in the final SWOT analysis, we can have let's say, a unified tool, but also a tool that can address specific needs depending on the challenges of each site and, of course, each solution that we aim to implement.
Okay, thank you. Then there is a question from Javiera Perez. Can you explain in more detail what happens in the co-creation meetings?
Well, as I said, we're in a very early stage, but the idea basically is to use what we do is use. Unfortunately, Stefan, who actually performed the co-creation process in Bratis, could not be with us today, so he can explain in depth exactly what they did. But I can tell you that the participatory tools that we use are very very basic in terms of co-creation. We use World Cafe and we use structured questions. And basically, what we try to do is create an atmosphere where all stakeholders can feel, let's say, welcome. It's very, difficult to do this, especially at local scale, because you have stakeholders that have conflicts among them that have nothing to do with the wetland, nothing to do with the solutions that you are proposing. So this is the basic challenge, but the way we try to address this is by putting focus on this. This is for a very specific cause. It has nothing to do with, issues that you might have personally or land ownership issues, which is the biggest challenge, by the way, in local scale, or economic conflicts. But it has to do with, we're trying to put focus on this is an asset. Also at the core of the project, ProCleanLakes, for example, is our ecosystem services and promotion of ecosystem services. So we're trying to focus on how to show all these people that there is common interest there. So focus on the common interest, the common asset that we can all use, and also this, show them that they have, that their interest goes beyond, let's say, a small conflict that they may have with the neighbor, and how creating a solution, co-creating a solution with the neighbor you have conflict with could actually, resolve this conflict. So basically, we have structured conversations to address the question that are guided by specific questions focused on the matter. We try to cope with, moving astray from the conversation and, losing the subject. It's not always possible, but most of the time you get there with this approach. And of course, I mentioned the World Cafe because it's my favorite tool, because it gives, how to say, a structured way for everyone to say their opinion and every opinion to be heard. And then you just go straight to choosing and tailoring solutions among all the ones that have been discussed. So this is basically the main idea.
Now, thank you for the detailed answer. So now we will pass to the next presentation by Julia Shuleka on restoring Europe's lakes, governance, complexity, stakeholder engagement, and the FutureLakes approach. So the floor is yours, Julia.
So my name is Julia. I'm working for the Norwegian Institute for Water Research in a section called Water and Society. So we work precisely on the stakeholder engagement and very different governance issues in our project. And I would like to discuss with you the restoring of Europe's lakes in more like governance and stakeholder context based on the FutureLakes project that I work with. And we are very happy. I'm very happy we have two presentations from the FutureLakes projects today. My presentation will be followed up by Heikki from our Finnish case. So my presentation is more like an overarching or introduction to the project and to the governance issues and stakeholder engagement that we have, and then we'll zoom in into one case. So I think we complement each other greatly. And the outline for my presentation is I would like to start with a few slides on more inclusive lake governance and then move to the FutureLakes approach, where I will present to you our work package that is dedicated to the public mobilization, engagement, and lake governance. And in that work, we have four tasks corresponding to different research streams and interventions that we do in the project. So I'll discuss the stakeholder mapping, then a new governance framework that my colleagues developed in the FutureLakes project precisely on lake governance. And then I would like to present more of our ongoing work on building more inclusive platforms for dialogue on our demo basin lakes and more wide public or citizen mobilization and activities around the lakes. I already have the impression that this has been a bit introduced by Sonia and Shanti, but maybe it's good to stress it out even more, that Europe's lakes face significant stress and nearly half fail to meet the good ecological status under the Water Framework Directive because of different problems with nutrient pollution, with biodiversity loss, and also the emerging climate change impacts. And there is many multifaceted issues related to eutrophication, water scarcity, flooding, invasive species, and also multiple sectors around the lakes. But the EU Nature Restoration Law and the European Green Deal have the ambition to increase the lake restoration efforts across Europe. But this is not only the ecological systems, different ecological systems of the lakes, but lakes are also embedded in wider socio-technical systems. So in addition to the technical knowledge, practitioners and lake managers need quite a good understanding of the governance complexities and issues related to stakeholder engagement, planning, monitoring, and the relation in the lake restoration efforts. So there is an urgent need for improved governance systems and understanding of different governance concepts around lake restoration. I think Sonia mentioned it as well, that effective governance, and part of it is, of course, the inclusive part of governance with the stakeholder involvement, that this is one of the main barriers for lake restoration, as many technological solutions and scientific diagnosis are in place. So the poor stakeholder engagement has been highlighted as one of the main obstacles for effective restoration in this World Water Quality Alliance Global Survey for Restoration Practitioners, where more than half of the respondents identified stakeholder engagement as a decisive factor for the project's success, and they ranked it before knowledge and available resources. So it's quite telling. And inclusive governance, I would say it has two core dimensions. One, why we need inclusive governance is more related to the normative dimension, that this is a democratic right of the citizens and communities around the lakes to be part of lake management, lake visioning, and so on. On the other hand, inclusive governance is also part of a very pragmatic strategy to increase the effectiveness and sustainability of the measures and of water management decisions. So by recognizing the challenges posed by very complex stakeholder setting and different types of knowledge and competence, so examples of good governance and governance analysis are very important for the policymakers and practitioners to navigate the lake restoration and conservation. So in the FutureLakes project, we both conduct some research on governance issues in lake restoration, but we also try to pilot some concrete interventions to support good and inclusive lake governance around our demo basin lakes. So these are the demo basin lakes in the Future Lake project that you can see on the map. It's the Loch Leven in Scotland, Lake Isle that I already heard as well in the Netherlands, the Norwegian case of Lake Vesijärvi and the Finnish case, Lake Vesijärvi, that will have a presentation follow up by Heikki after my presentation, and the Kartuzy lakes in Poland and Lake Karla in Greece. So those are the demo sites that we focus our research and also our interventions. And this is the dedicated work package that allows us to work on public mobilization, engagement, and lake governance. And I thought it might be interesting to present it to you, although it's still some of the ongoing work. So we have altogether 4 tasks. The first one, stakeholder mapping and monitoring of stakeholder engagement, and this is a completed task. So it's something that I will report on in the next slide. Then we have the climate resilient ecosystem-based water governance. So this is the new governance framework that my colleagues developed in the project, and this is also a task that just completed in March. So I'll be happy to report on it. And the remaining 2, it's ongoing tasks, so the issues that we currently work with. Number 3 is the platforms for dialogue. So this is a group, we call it Critical Friends, and I will explain later why and how it looks like. And last but not least is work on public or citizen engagement and mobilization and pilots that we have in the project. So starting with the stakeholder mapping, and I could also relate it to the ProCleanLakes presentation of Shanti, that this is quite of a classical element in projects working on stakeholder engagement. That first you need to map the stakeholders and to see what are the actors, and then to prepare targeted strategies of engagement. So this is something that a report that you can already find on the FutureLakes website on the stakeholder mapping that we conducted in the 6 demo sites of the project in the first 6 months of the project. And I thought it would be quite interesting to present the method and some very brief results from the stakeholder mapping, and then how this could be further used to work on inclusive governance and stakeholder engagement. So the stakeholder mapping includes some practical methods for how to identify, how to categorize and assess stakeholder interest and influence. And we used the OECD framework, so the framework of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, developed to kind of categorize different levels of engagement. And another framework is the power interest matrix that can be used to visualize different categories of stakeholders based on their power and interest. So the result of that was that for each of the demo sites in the project, we had kind of a historical narrative first of stakeholder engagement. So because I also need to stress it, in the FutureLakes project, we have demo sites that already had the restoration projects. Of course, some measures are still running, and there is always work after the restoration. The main restoration project has been finalized, but we could study lakes that have been quite more the pioneers of lake restoration. So with lake restoration efforts spanning to many decades before we started to work with the project. But the result of the stakeholder mapping is stakeholder identification tables. So we could identify more than 200 of stakeholders, of actors in our demo sites, ranging between 20 and 60 per case. And we prepared this power interest matrices to visualize the role in lake restoration. So this is the OECD framework for levels of stakeholder engagement. And I think Sonia also mentioned a very similar framework. And this is a typical, like a classical tool to kind of visualize the levels of engagement rooted in the Arnstein's ladder of engagement proposed already in the 60s in the US to analyze different levels of engagement. Here it ranges from the basic communication to the co-production and co-decision making. So also the terms that we heard today in the presentations before. So there's different levels. The idea is that you start with basic communication and then you increase reaching more participation, representation, partnerships, and finally the highest level of engagement being the co-production and together the of knowledge. And the other method used in the stakeholder mapping approach that I mentioned was the power interest matrix. And this is something to categorize the stakeholders when you have identified. I took the case from the Kartuzy Lakes in Poland because it's relatively small. So you can imagine for the lake where we identified 60 key stakeholders, it would be the table would be difficult to read. But in the matrix, you can see that you could categorize the actors based on their power and interest. And in our case, it was the power and interest in the context of the lake restoration. So those that have high power and high interest are those that you need to manage very closely. But you have also other actors with, for example, high power but low interest. So those that you need to kind of keep satisfied in the further work of the project. You have stakeholders with low power and low interest, so those that you need to monitor, and those that have low power but high interest that need to be kept informed in the project. And of course, it's a snapshot, so it's not static; it evolves. You can also have strategies on how to make some actors, some stakeholders that should have a stake in the lake management, how to kind of try to increase their role. Their interest, for example, in the project. So that was the first task that I reported about stakeholder mapping. Now the second task that we have been working, but it's my colleagues from Deltares in the Netherlands, Åse Johannessen and Lilith Kramer, that developed this framework. So I hope I managed to go through their slides, and if you have any questions, I will try to answer. But if there is any really detailed question to that, the report is not yet available, but will be available soon. So you can also try to approach them directly. But I will do my best to present on their behalf. So the idea behind this work was that there exists conventional frameworks for lake governance, but they are quite static and top-down and very sector-specific. So there is, for example, the Integrated Lake Basin Management framework that has 6 pillars, but there is like silos style of a framework. So the idea for developing and proposing a new framework was not to focus so much on the formalities of the system, of the governance system, but more on the functionalities, meaning that learning and dialogue and this engagement is like a key part, and there is many feedback loops and many iterative cycles, and I will present the framework later, but just introduce the story why this has been part of the project. So it has been developed to test both like two elements, the hydrological element with the ecological element of the governance framework, and it has been tested and developed together with our 6 demo basins, with semi-structured interviews with the lake managers, and then finally, kind of after the first initial framework, it has been further tested on 2 cases in details in the Netherlands and Finland with some stakeholder inputs. And the final report, it's both the evaluation of the governance systems and landscape at those 6 demo sites, but also methodology that you can use for thinking about a more holistic, climate resilient and ecosystem-based water governance. So starting with like very basic definition of governance, we're talking about it, we have it in the title of the webinar today. So to me, like a very classical definition of governance is that it's about steering of collective action beyond the government alone, right? So you have very different actors that take part in the governance system. But we have also like a specific definition of governance in the context of lake governance, and this is a normative definition, so this is more like how we think it should be. So my colleagues proposed this definition that lake governance is the integrated ecosystem-based management of lakes, and through coordinated efforts among multiple actors across various levels, anchoring in supportive policy and institutional frameworks. And this should involve securing sustainable financing, implementing, monitoring the management measures through dialogue, fostering social learning and trust among stakeholders, but also continuously adapting practices to ensure like a future climate resilient outcomes. And this is the framework. I know it can be very complex at the first sight, and I will try to navigate through it in the next slide. But what you can see here, it has 7 main elements, and the first is the problem identification. So you can see on the left-hand side there is problem identification, and then you enter into the core of the framework, which is the coordination, dialogue, and decision-making part, where the stakeholder engagement is a key factor. So it's space where dialogue and decision making related to the lake management are being made, but it has also like many connections with the other elements, as you see, and a cycle loop inside. The other key elements are communication, and then fundraising, and then implementation, and then scientific knowledge, and also like the bigger policy and regulation and institutional context, and number 7. So this is the framework. I hope it's clear after my presentation, but I would like to give you examples of those different steps. So we have those 7 key elements of the governance framework, and the first one is about the problem identification. And I have some examples, quotations from the work on developing this framework from our different demo sites. So who starts the restoration process? What actors are involved? How can we kind of enter this framework? And this is quite interesting because studying all those 6 demo sites, and they have all very distinct stories on how the restoration projects came about. And so I have an example from Poland, from the Kartuzy Lakes, where citizen complaints, residents saw and smelled that their 4 urban lakes had turned into sewage ponds, toxic cyanobacteria blooms and odors, and were unusable for swimming. And there has been public outcry in the 2000s, pushed the issue into the municipal agenda. So the story behind the restoration project was actually the local community that was hindered from the many leisure activities, swimming, only hiking around the lakes because of the lake problems. Okay, now we're back to the heart of the governance framework, as I said. So this is the number 2, which is the coordination, dialogue, and the decision making. So this is where the decisions are made, but it's also connected to all the other elements. And here there is a nice quotation from Heikki, who will present after me, that that this is the CEO and the Vesijärvi Foundation and the foundation's board that fulfill those coordination roles. So in the center of the governance framework, that they schedule and facilitate stakeholder meetings and share follow-ups on agreed actions and engage external partners. The city of Lahti's representatives also provide leadership by aligning municipal resources with the foundation plans. This shared leadership model keeps the multi-actor effort on track. So this is the heart of the governance framework. In the case, I will not explain more because it's Heikki's work, but I wanted to show you that although there were 6 demo basins, so this heart of the governance was very, very different for all those cases. So in the for the Finnish case, it is a foundation-led collaborative governance model where the foundation collaborates with the municipality, but also with a range of different actors, university and civil society organizations. So this is the heart of the governance framework. It's quite different in the Polish case, in the Kartuzy Lakes, where it was the municipality initiated restoration because of the public outcry that started together with the university, a partnership for both diagnosing and preparing the restoration plan and then implementing it. So it's a bit different actor setup starting the restoration project. Also for Norway, this is coordinated at the watershed level. What happens at Lake Vesijärvi, there is like a regional organization that is institutionalized, that is a work that brings together several municipalities in the watershed, and it has 3 thematic working groups. So it has wastewater, agriculture, and ecology. So this is also like very different. We have also like the Greek case, like Karla, which is more centralized governance framework that now starts to engage more the local actors. On the other hand, there is also a Dutch case that has a very decentralized governance model with regional water boards that are quite essential in the heart of the framework. And last but not least, we have very much science-led monitoring model, governance model from Loch Leven, where the university presence and monitoring has been fundamental to design the governance framework around the lake, like the heart of the middle part of the framework. Then we have more elements. Number 3 was communication, and here an example from Norway, how such communication of the restoration and also like mobilization work with different stakeholders can look like. And the quotation from our expert was, on-farm engagement and peer learning, that they were crucial for the communication and outreach. And the MORSA, so this is the organization at the regional level, relied on personal outreach to farmers. So agricultural extension agents visited individual farms to discuss erosion control and offer help and organize like free advisory services for fertilizer reduction. That was the problem, identified problem that for Lake Vesijärvi. Later, we have the funding and resource mobilization, the 4th element of the framework. And an example, a quotation from the Dutch case study IJsselmeer, is that the IJsselmeer, being a large multi-use system, has benefited from integrating those different sectors, but also securing occasional private co-funding. On the public side, it was the national government has dedicated substantial funds through its flat safety water management programs. So this is for an example for resource mobilization and funding for lake restoration. And number 5, it's the implementation. So, for example, in the Loch Leven, in the Scottish case, the implementation focused on reducing phosphorus through major upgrades of the sewage treatment works and agricultural runoff controls, and this included treatment installations and voluntary buffer strips along fields. We have two more elements for the framework. It's the scientific knowledge development, and this is very strong in all our demo site lakes. Across the lakes, long-term monitoring and dedicated research were fundamental to the restoration success. For Loch Leven, Vesijärvi, and Vanshu show that continuous data over decades not only measures improvement, but also catches emerging problems. So this is also very crucial, that it's not a work that can be finalized somehow, but it needs to be updated, even though the restoration projects have been finalized. Climate change and other stressors lead to the fact that this is something that work on lake management, it doesn't end with a good restoration project. In Carthuз and IJsselmeer, there were some targeted studies because there were knowledge gaps, and it was necessary to identify the new know-how and address those knowledge gaps. And the common lesson is that importance of making data accessible and actionable, because turning monitoring results into shared knowledge, it builds trust and also can help on guiding collective action. So this is an important, of course, element of the good governance framework. And last element on that framework is more like a macro perspective with wider policy and regulations that are also influencing the lake management and decision making. And in that context, there is a quotation from Lake Karla in Greece that the lake's reconstruction, because Lake Karla has been drained before and it was like a massive restoration project, it was framed as a national development project co-funded by the EU, embedding Karla's restoration in Greece EU structural funds program, ensured high-level political support and a very massive more than 245 million investment. So Karla is now part of a Nature 2000 area, theoretically ensuring ecological protection in law. So that was the end of the governance framework. As I said, it will be a project deliverable, this framework, and a document that will be soon available on the FutureLakes website. And I have two more tasks on how we work with.
Julia, you have a
and I have
minutes.
Yeah, but it's the majority of the presentation is already. It's just a couple of slides because it's ongoing work, so I don't have much to present. But I thought it's still quite interesting, maybe for those who design similar interventions or are interested in the holistic framework. So the third task is the platforms for dialogue, which is something how we work on making lake governance that is already in most of our cases quite good and reaching the highest levels of the ladder of participation. In fact, to find some interventions to make it more inclusive. And the idea is to bring, we call it the group's critical friends. So this is more like participatory platforms that can broaden stakeholder involvement, and we piloted it only in 3 case studies on Greece, Poland, and Norway. And unlike formal communities, so the traditional lake basin management groups and regulatory bodies, such groups are just supportive friends of the project, able to maybe point to some omitted elements and create a more welcoming space to improve the quality of lake restoration and lake governance through more dialogue and collaboration. And we identified 3 different thematic areas together with those critical friends. At Lake Karla, we work in a series of workshops on governance fragmentations and mixed responsibilities of actors, because this is a problem around the lake. For Lake Vanshu, we identified the problem of nitrogen runoff and downstream stakeholders in the Oslo Fjord. And I think this is also quite interesting when you do the stakeholder mapping, that it doesn't necessarily need to be actors in the lake, but for example, downstream stakeholders, it's a group that can be omitted in the lake governance, but still have a big stake in lake governance issues, and this is the case in the Lake Vesijärvi, which is close to the Oslo fjord. So the lake and marine restoration can actually be combined and in dialogue. And in the Kartuzu Lakes, we focus on stormwater, although there is also some other subjects defined. So this is the meetings. We use different methods, but the idea is to build bridges between the established governance structures and bring more inclusiveness, different actors that normally don't meet in such arenas in various co-creation workshops. And I think I have 2 more slides. I hope it's fine. The last project task in this work package is to work on more civic engagement, public engagement, so work with citizen science to increase also the local community's commitment to lake restoration, to awareness of the benefits, and it's targeted for different user groups. We have developed a catalog of citizen science schemes for lake communities, and now this summer there will be some activities in the demo basins with the citizen science activities. My colleagues from Greece developed a catalog based on 3 different Mission Ocean pillars. So there is citizen science activities that can relate to the protection of biodiversity, and there is examples of BioBlitz actions, for example, using the iNaturalist app. There is also the pillar of pollution prevention to work on nitrogen and phosphorus loads, and dedicated apps for this. And finally, it's the blue economy related apps to, for example, work on the algae blooms and use the citizens in monitoring and also targeting those problems of the lakes to bring them closer to the lake problems and management. So this is an example of such an app on how apps can be used in citizen science and support these activities. So this is an app, Blooming Algae, dedicated to report on harmful algal blooms and cyanobacteria. And it has a very rapid notification and verification system, and it can be linked also to the benefits of public health and animal health in the region, and support municipalities and lake managers, and also bring the citizens closer to understand the lake problems, but also to help in addressing them. Okay, this is my last slide. It is a case in lake governance, in good lake governance, that there is no one solution for those different problems and pressures, as lakes are different ecological and social systems. But what is important is collaboration, and this is also the case for this work. So I presented today, but this is a work of more people. So I would like just to thank the FutureLakes team, and especially the dedicated work package that works on the engagement and governance, and all the demo site leads. So thank you all. This is my email address. So if you have any questions, we have just 5 minutes for questions, hopefully 5. So if you want to get some more information or catch up, just feel free to write me an email. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. So I don't know if there are any questions. In any case, I do have one for you. You mentioned that the power interest matrix is not static. It obviously changes throughout the project. So in FutureLakes, do you monitor the power interest matrix at different stages of the project, or do you do it only at the beginning?
That's a very good question. So the report on stakeholder mapping, so it was deliverable in the project that we had already very early in the project, actually the first one that we delivered. So this is like the kind of the status from the moment that we start working with the project, and we have been creating those maps for different lakes. Based on that, we have some strategies on how to involve those actors that we think should be have more interest or in the project, and there is some targeted activities for that. So the critical friends, for example, when we thought about the groups and whom to invite, who could be a critical friend. So this was very helpful in the power interest matrix, that we could identify actors that in theory could have a bigger stake in lake management, but are so far like peripheral actors, at least like in the restoration project. So when we have been inviting members or stakeholders to the meeting, so this was also something that we actively use. So we hope at the end of the project we could say that at least like the interest or the power we cannot control. So there are some also new institutions created in our demo sites, for example, in Greece. So this getting some more responsibilities and power, but this is beyond the project. But at least the interest. So I think this is something that we try to address, and hopefully at the end we can say that that this changed for some of the demo sites. But this is ongoing work. So it's a very good question, and I hope, that this is the case.
Thank you so much, Julia. So now we will jump to the next presentation, the last presentation from Heikki Mäkinen from Lake Vesijärvi Foundation. And he's a stakeholder in the FutureLakes project. So his vision is will be very interesting also to hear. So the floor is yours, Heikki.
Like I told, I work as a CEO in Lake Vesijärvi Foundation here in Lahti. Julia already showed the location of the lake. My academic background lays in geography and in social sciences, and the geography inside me forces me to start this presentation by map. So this is Lake Vesijärvi. Like seeing located in the southern Finland, it's the 44th largest lake of Finland. We have huge number of lakes, almost 200,000. Surface area is 109 square kilometers, and average depth, very typical Finnish, 6 meters. Like already heard, governance issues, they are these governance activities and governance procedures, they are very much culture, history, and geography and so on, related things. So you can't really understand the governance activities without knowing at least something of the history of the lake and the work done there. Lake Vesijärvi was born between two ridges in southern Finland right after the ice age ended about 10,600 years ago here, and also the first permanent inhabitants in the area of nowadays Finland settled on its shores some 8,000 years ago. Everything was fine until the industrialization started in 1860s in this part of Europe. Finland was a part of Russia those days, and the railway from Finland to St. Petersburg was constructed in 1869 via Lahti, a tiny little village of Lahti, to east, and then from the north to south, Värtsy water canal was constructed in 1870s and 1871, and that canal joined Lake Vesijärvi and the second largest lake in Finland, Lake Päijänne, together, and by these two ways, this railway and this waterway, the village of Lahti became a transport hub, and the industry located in this area as well. The population of the city of Lahti grew very strongly, especially after the war, the Second World War, and unfortunately, the wastewater treatment capacity was not able to keep up with the population growth, and that led into big problems in the lake. And for some reason or another, I'm missing slides, so I have to try. I guess I have to try to. It doesn't show all the slides for some reason. I don't know why. The result was that the lake, which as its nature was a clear water lake, rich of fish, but really clear water lake, that situation lasted until.
Okay.
To,
We don't
yes,
see your slides.
situation in the lake was quite good, at least to the mid of the 20th century. But then, because of the growth of the population and industry, all the waste which were let into the lake, the lake became the worst, most eutrophied, the most polluted lake in a large lake in the whole Finland. From 60s to 70s to the 80s, it was absolutely like a wastewater lake, totally out of any kind of recreation, totally a total disaster those times, and still in 1980s, 1990s, these blue-green algae bloomings, which started in 1960s, they were still there, covered large parts of the lake, and they existed every single summer, and it was quite clear that something had to be done. Implementing the governance practices started already in the beginning of the 1970s, but we have already heard definitions of governance. To me, governance means such a project in which we set the agenda together, we same goals, we do the planning activities together and implement the plans together. And without third sector actors doesn't appear to me like governance, but different kind of governing activities instead. But the first steps towards this implementation of governance were taken already in the beginning of the 1970s, when the city of Lahti developed kind of municipal environmental protection committee, in which it invited parties outside the administration. And the purpose for this committee was, the main activity of the committee was to try to find ways to restore the Lake Vesijärvi. They had two different options on the floor, whether to landfill the whole lake or then to restore. Fortunately, they decided to start to restore, to try to find ways to get the lake into a better condition. These governments working together activities were extremely important when an intensive management fishing activity took place from the end of 1980s to the beginning of the 1990s. Huge amount of plantivorous fish were taken out of the lake those years. I guess it's still the largest biomanipulation activity in the whole world, which has been done. And this activity was operated by the municipalities, by the academia, by the local fishermen, by the water area owners, by the land area owners, and so on. And from those days, we have had kind of traditional cooperation here, and we have managed to increase our social capital in water management. And it started very much when the Lake Vesijärvi Foundation was established in 2007. The foundation is a combination of public and private bodies, organizations. It was founded by three municipalities of Lake Vesijärvi, the city of Lahti, municipality of Hollola, and municipality of Asikkala, as well as three private sector enterprises. All of these organizations are still involved in the work today, as well as tens of other organizations. The mission of Lake Vesijärvi Foundation is to enable the preservation and strengthening of the scientific, economic, and social environment of water management. And the key word is enable. We don't think, we understand very well that it's not possible to do the trick on our own. We need huge amount of different knowledge, different capabilities, different kind of resources to get the work done. We need those who are good in marketing, those who know the biology, those who have networking capacity. We need media, so on. The main elements of governance for us are firstly communication, which has been mentioned many times already. And here we have a couple of arenas and forums which are important in our case. There's the board of the foundation. In the board we have representatives of the founding organizations. In the council of the foundation, in which some 24 representatives from academia, from the municipalities, from business sector, and so on, talking together. Then media, both print and social media, and which is very important is meetings with partners and stakeholders. this is a vital part of this governance activities, and foundation. We, for example, last year we had more than 100 meetings, different kind of meetings with different stakeholders. So in practice, we do have at least 2 in every single week. It's a time-consuming activity, but without that, we couldn't manage. The planning and implementation, like I guess we all know, river basin management plans and program measures by the Water Framework Directive. They exist, but at least in the Finnish case, they are more or less like general planning documents. And if you want to get local stakeholders involved, you can't do that by general plans. You need much detailed plans. They are not interested in general issues. They are interested in very local issues. And to fulfill that requirement, the foundation with partner organizations, we have created so-called Lake Vesijärvi program, which is kind of third level of this planning hierarchy. And in this paper, we describe what exactly is to be done next year, where, by whom, and hopefully also who pays. And in terms of implementation of all those plans, more than 60 organizations are involved in the implementation process, and numerous private people as well.
Heikki, just to remind you, you have 4 more minutes.
Yep. Funding and fundraising, that's very important. Of course, one of the key elements. It's a full-time work as well. We get funding from municipalities, from state project funding, from the business sector, private people, but it requires marketing and selling from day one, and I guess it's a never-ending story. Monitoring activities, there are many different organizations which are doing the monitoring, and the foundation have a database in which all the parties, also the officials, the administration, shares the monitoring data, and it's accessible there from there quite easily for all those interested in that. We've reached quite much, we achieved quite much, but we are not, and I guess we are perhaps not, we will never perhaps be in the very end, partly because of the future challenges, climate change and biodiversity loss. And so this is something which, this work is something which have to be done to the future. But as like I said, quite a lot has been achieved, and I would like to end the presentation by showing you a couple of photos from the lake, and if you compare these to those which were taken in the 1960s and 70s, you can, I believe, quite easily see the difference we've got. water is quite clear, and the scenery is quite nice today. And if the whole lake was not used and out of any kind of recreational use a couple of decades ago, nowadays it's totally opposite situation. Okay, thank you, and sorry for these technical problems. I don't know why, but such is life. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Heikki. And it seems that your work at the lake has been fundamental to change the ecological status, and so it's an amazing job. We have a question from Sonia.
Yes, thank you, Heikki, for this presentation and for taking us through the whole historical process. I would like to know, how have all the actors engaged during this very long process? Because it takes decades and decades from what I have seen. So what kind of recommendation you will give us to keep people motivated and engaged during this long process?
You have to have goals which can be reached. So not too too difficult goals. You have to act in a very local level. If you are working with local people, local organizations. You have to take them to the process already when deciding the agenda. That's very important. It's very difficult to get anybody involved or bind it to the project in the very end when implementing the ideas which have been decided by some other people or some other organizations. So I guess that's one of the main points. But it's not easy, of course. And if some organization or some enterprise or whatever will jump away, then some other hopefully will take the place, and then I guess.
Thank you.
That's the
Congratulations for the work.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you to all speakers for their excellent presentations. And I thank also all participants to this webinar, and have a nice evening.